What is good, NBA fans? Welcome into another week of Dropping Dimes. I'm your host, Matt Knost, and we are here to talk about everything NBA Finals. We're 3 games in. Game 4 is later tonight. I'm jazzed for it. Can't wait. Been looking forward to it since the last game. So the game plan for today is discuss what transpired in Game 3. Oh, and for those wondering, I know I mentioned I might do a show on Monday last week, but considering for some reason in my head, Tuesday was the next game, not tonight. So that would have been the reason for it. Whereas next week, I might end up doing a game. I think I'll do a show Monday afternoon. Let's say, let's do it noon on Monday. I'll be doing another live, considering we'll have 2 games in between then and now. Hell, the series could be over at that point. And if it is, maybe we'll just do an autopsy and discuss what went wrong, what went right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But noon next week, we'll see you guys then. And if that changes, I'll let you know. My schedule's a little bit in flux on Monday, but I should be able to swing noon. All right, let's get into it. Game 3. Well, it's amazing how good the Bucks look when Holiday and Middleton are hitting their shots, especially Holiday from 3. Shot, 5 of 10, I believe, from 3. And the Bucks as a whole, if you take Jay Crowder off the Suns just shot abysmal from 3. Crowder went 6 of 7, which was excellent. He only took 7 shots from the floor. All of them were threes. Buried 6 of them. Already in the chats, Jake Cleveland says Scott Foster for MVP. Daniel Savoy says hello. And Ramon Cook says noon LA time, European viewers, evening entertainment. So Scott Foster for MVP. He's the ref that Chris Paul, when he is actually playing, has never beaten or has never won, rather, in the playoffs when Scott Foster is officiating the game. But I don't blame Foster for that one. Even if they had officiated it slightly differently, I don't know that it turns out any better for Phoenix. I mean, watching the game, the Bucks were controlling pace. They were crushing them in the boards. Putbacks and points in the paint, they absolutely dominated them. And then you throw in turnovers and free throws into the mix. And I'm not entirely sure how much Scott Foster really affected the outcome. Unless you want to say, well, the free throw disparity, which Monty Williams is doing what Monty Williams should do. It's the same thing that any coach should do after one player on the opposing team shoots more free throws than your team did entirely. But in, I guess, defense of Giannis and or as a rebuttal to Monty Williams, you do have a team philosophy of hack Giannis. This isn't the first time that he's gone to the line in the teens. I think I can pull it up real quick. I think he shot, was it 16 or 17 free throws in that game? 17. So 17 in game 3. Which sounds like a lot, but the previous game, he shot 18. And then in game 1, he shot 12. So he's in double digits every one of these games. And you do have a team-wide philosophy of hack Giannis. Also, you have to factor into that the Bucks, because they live in the paint so much more, and you have Giannis who is constantly forcing the issue by driving down in there to create some sort of action, you're going to get more calls in those instances, whereas the Suns, no one is driving to the lane. It's a rare occurrence when you see somebody going for a layup, outside of like that campaign little scoop layup that is a thing of beauty every time he just slips it in under the defense. But Booker is not trying to force the issue by getting in to the paint and trying to keep the defense honest. you could say that because his nose is more than likely still tender, that he's hesitant to go in there into the lane. There is that. The Bucks have a tremendous amount of size and length on defense. And so long as Lopez isn't out there, they're willing to switch practically any defensive matchup. I mean, even with Lopez out there, they'll switch 1 through 4 and do a good job of it. There's only, you could take advantage of Middleton. If the Bucks go with one of their small lineups and say Bryn Forbes is out there, although at this point, Bryn Forbes' minutes seem to be tailing off. I'll be interested to see tonight if that continues. But when they have even their small ball lineup in there, you still have Giannis, Middleton, Drew, and then some combination of Pat Connaughton, PJ Tucker, Bobby Portis. So you got length in Tucker and Portis, and one of those guys, whenever you put them out there, depending on what combinations you do on that small ball lineup. And they ran both teams that, like the third quarter, there was large chunks of time where both were running small units. That's also a function for the Suns of Ayton needs to get some rest. And with Saric being out, you're going to have to play some sort of combination of Torrey Craig and Kaminsky, and it's not quite the same presence as Ayton. It was interesting to see Kaminsky get the number of minutes that he did. I figured they might just go to a small lineup when Ayton needed to sit and forego getting Kaminsky those minutes, but perhaps they just felt that the size difference between the two teams was too great not to have some sort of big out there, but it's not really helping all that much. I mean, the Suns have been out-rebounded in every game. And where it really hurts is on the offensive rebound side, because putbacks and finishing within 4 feet of the rim, according to Cleaning the Glass, the Bucks are just absolutely dominating. And when you're watching it, you see it. Like, there are putbacks after putbacks. In game 1, I remember where Lopez had, in the first quarter, 2 different sequences where he had 2 and 3 attempts off of his own shots of getting a rebound, putting it back. Now, he missed. And I think that was part of the difference of game 1. Had some of those putbacks gone down early, it would have knotted up. That coupled with there was a free throw discrepancy that I felt was unjust, whereas complaining about Giannis shooting that many free throws, well, it's like you have a team-wide philosophy of hack the guy, and he is driving to the lane, forcing the issue on the refs. Also, you got to take into account, the NBA is a star-driven league, and he is a 2-time back-to-back MVP. He is a star, so he's going to get more calls. But at the same time, Monty Williams would not be doing his job if he didn't bring that up. I like that he tried to skirt in his post-game saying Giannis's name, then straight up alluding to it was Giannis that shot more than us. There's no way to get around that fact. It's as simple when you look at the box score. I don't know if he's trying to evade the fine. I didn't see if there was a fine levied against him. You can't publicly criticize officials. But I don't know that I would focus specifically. It's one thing to say that in public, but I can't imagine that the coaching staff and the players are genuinely focused on, well, he got more foul shots than us. Instead, if I'm a Suns fan, I'm like, listen, Booker had, his second bad game of the finals. Game 1 was not a good game. Game 3 was not a good game for him, shooting-wise. The team as a whole shot piss poor from 3 outside of Jay Crowder. Mikal Bridges looked timid, which is interesting. He's played with such confidence throughout these playoffs that to see him kind of take a step back and not be assertive as assertive as he's been thus far in the playoffs was interesting. It could just be an anomaly, and he's right back to doing what he's been doing, which has been just an excellent starter for them. It's amazing. I remember last year in the bubble and just watching them play, and it was addition by subtraction. By Kelly Oubre not eating up the minutes at that spot, you got more from Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, and suddenly this team looked really interesting. They have length. They can shoot from three. And, Oubre is a quote unquote playmaker. He relies on his athleticism to get those shots. And when you have somebody that can catch and shoot and is more than happy to play off ball and just allow Booker to cook, and then now it's Booker in addition to CP3, you're not going to have the ball in your hands much. So Oubre would be a bad fit on this team, but it was great to see the emergence of those two guys and their maturation throughout these playoffs. So if I'm the Suns, I'm like, well, look, Book had a bad game, just a bad game. What did he shoot? 1 for 7 from 3, 1 for 8 from 3. Hold on, I'll pull it up right now. Book shot 1 for 7 from 3, 3 of 14 overall. And then, uncharacteristically, 3 for 5 from the free throw line. Chris Paul was also 2 of 3. Not exactly their best shooting days. 2 of 3 isn't unforgivable. Chris Paul is one of the best free throw shooters in the league. But yeah, so Book had a bad game. Ayton got into foul trouble. But I really think it was, the Bucks were forcing the pace. They were defensively getting into passing lanes, making sure their arms were out at all times, making good reads on defense, on switches, and when to stay. I really liked the when PJ Tucker got switched onto Devin Booker, because he can body him, and you're not going to get those calls as often in the playoffs. And Booker was just settling for a lot of contested shots. Some of them aren't his fault. Like the one that he got on the baseline, and Drew Holiday was in him, and Drew is D'ing him up. Shot clock is winding down, and then Drew reaches in, knocks the ball out. Booker regains the ball and his composure, but then sees that basically he's got to hoist the shot up pretty quickly because the shot clock is about to expire, and does, and it hits the top of the backboard. You can't blame him for something like that, but quite a number of his shots in that last game were contested. And, when he hits them, he's a god, and when he doesn't, he's mortal. It's so far in the finals, he has been down, up, down. Now, does that mean that tonight he'll be up? Well, I guess if we're going to do recency bias and just take the sample size of the last 3 games, you either can buy into that as a pattern and trend, or you can say, well, 2 out of 3, 66% of the time, he's been down this series. But they do have enough size and athleticism that if they're going to continue to switch, they can find matchups that work well. The only time so far the Bucks have been cooked is in game 1 when Lopez and then Portis, but Lopez primarily, just because he was in there for longer stretches, was getting cooked and pick and rolls. And then when he was doing drop coverage to get underneath the screen, then Chris Paul is just getting into floaters and whatnot. But the Suns need to start taking the ball in to the lane, getting it in within 4 to 5 feet, and just making the defense commit to you. So then you have kick out and you've got a wide open 3-point shooter out there, and they have enough shooting on that team. If I was Monty, I would consider limiting my rotation and not getting Kaminsky Abdul Nader played a little bit, but it was kind of, I don't know if I count those minutes technically from the last game, but I'm not sure I play Kaminsky. Perhaps I just go with we'll sub in either Cam Johnson or Torrey Craig or something and get more shooting out there and run it like that. So JJ Davi over in the chat says, is it possible that if Phoenix wins, but Giannis keeps having 40-point games, he still gets MVP? There has not been an MVP from a losing team since Jerry West. And if ever there was a time to do it, I think that LeBron should have gotten the MVP when he took on the Warriors. They lost, but Kyrie and Kevin Love both got hurt, and they're out. And the Cavs had to change the entire makeup and strategy of their team. So it basically just became shooters, full-on shooters around LeBron, and he is the point guard orchestrating all of this offense. And they changed from an offensive powerhouse to a defensive stalwart team. So I think if he doesn't win it there, the narrative will more than likely be too strong for Chris Paul, and Chris Paul will win the Finals MVP because Booker right now with 2 bad games. Say the Suns win the next 2 and they win 4-1. Well, 2 out of those 4 wins Booker will have played, or 1 out of those 4 wins Booker will have played not up to snuff, and 2 out of the 5 for sure. We don't know how he's going to do tonight or the next game, or even if it ends in 5. But I think the narrative would be too strong for Chris Paul, and I think he takes it. Now, if Giannis just continues to dominate in every capacity, say he gets his 40, but he also does what he did last game, shoots well from the free throw line, making them think twice about the strategy, and has double-double, potentially triple-double every night, it's a discussion for sure. But you would need Booker and CP to just play okay to bad and the rest of the team step up for them in order for, I think, Giannis's narrative to overtake and the voters vote for somebody off the losing team. But it's been so long, I just don't know that it's going to happen. So Jake Cleveland says, hello from, is it Toole, Utah? Tooele. I don't know how to pronounce that. Do you see Booker having a bigger game than just 10 points? Well, he's shooting a lot of contested shots, which I brought up before. And, he can be a little bit streaky, but I think anytime you have a shooter like that, as much as Kobe is his idol, well, Kobe had stretches like this where he's up and down and shoots insanely well one game, and the next game practically shoots his team out of a potential shot. Just because Kobe always felt like Kobe shooting was the best option for the team. And more often than not, you'd have to grant him that he was correct. But there are those nights where he can shoot you out of, any chance of winning the game. Outside of game 2, which they won, I don't think there's been a game where Booker shot an egregious amount of shots. So game 2, yeah, he went 12 of 25, which 25 shots, 8 of 21 in game 1, and then 3 of 14 in game 3. 8 of 21 is piss poor when you take 21 shots. And you hit that few of them. But that also the last game, the 14, Monty Williams subbed him out in the 4th, and he never came back in. And I remember Jackson and Van Gundy were talking about it, whether or not that was a wise decision. And, I remember Jackson falling on the side of he thought it was smart that might as well get him the rest. This game is out of hand. And shortly thereafter, all the starters got subbed out. Jake says it's pronounced Twilla. So how in the world do you get Twilla from Tooele? I have no idea, but Twilla, Utah. Well, hello, Twilla, Utah. Anyway, but through this series, it's been relatively even. I realize it's double-digit wins for all involved, but it's legit just small little things here and there that have been the differences thus far. When you go and look at the numbers, Milwaukee has the rebounding edge, and they also have the turnover edge as well, I believe, because Chris Paul suddenly is turning the ball over like crazy. 4 turnovers in game 3. I think it was 6 turnovers in game 2, and then 2 turnovers in game 1. And this is a guy that it's not inconceivable for him to have 10 assists and 0 turnovers. His assist turnover ratio is fantastic. That's one of the reasons people call him point guard. But 6 and 4 turnovers in the last 2 games does not bode well. And Phoenix as a whole is turning the ball over more. They've had answers from outside shooting to counteract the fact that Milwaukee has owned the paint and owned putbacks and owned rebounds, both offensive and defensive. Through the first couple games, it was basically free throws and threes were kind of the bigger difference. But by and large, it's fairly even. You watch these games and it ends up, Phoenix wins by double digits and then Bucks win by double digits. And fans may just look at that and say, these games aren't close. And technically not, but the tension when you're watching it, it feels like it's a close game practically every time. And when you look at the numbers, it's relatively evenly matched. And as dumb as this is, it comes down to which team is going to hit their shots, because Middleton and Holiday looked excellent in the last game. In the previous game too, they were abysmal, just as bad as you possibly can be. And I don't know that I expect Drew Holiday to go 5 of 10, maybe more than possibly one more time in this series. But I don't foresee Drew Holiday doing this consistently. Whereas Middleton can do it. And perhaps now that they got the first W of the series, relieves a little bit of the pressure. Middleton's only been truly terrible in one game so far. And Giannis has been so consistent that you can't really deny everything that he's bringing to the team. But I'll be intrigued to see how much more the Bucks run out that small ball lineup with Giannis at the 4, or at the 5 rather, because Phoenix was forced to counteract that and run out a small lineup as well. Now it helps that Ayton, to make that transition, it helps that Ayton got into foul trouble, so you can toy around with that just a little bit more. But I think it gives the Bucks flexibility. And the weird thing is, Lopez is a good 3-point shooter and hasn't really been this series so far, but he can go off. I mean, look at the last round where he won them a game and he was just so dominant. But his defense, Ayton has started each of these games, if memory serves, really well. Right down in my notes, one of the first things that I have written down is Ayton's hot as hell to start this game, and Booker is struggling. But this isn't the first game, and Ayton plays with a lot of poise. There's that clip that was floating around, I think it was after game 2, where Monty Williams is basically telling him, you don't need to necessarily fill up the stat sheet to have an impact on the game. Just bring intensity. And I'm paraphrasing this. Raise your level, I think is what he was saying over and over and over again. But it's a good message of there are all kinds of things that you can do that never show up in a box score, but are the difference between winning and losing games. And we need you out there making plays like that. And Ayton has consistently shown to be pretty rock solid, and stymied all that, the Suns could have had Luka type of, although I don't know that it was as loud as for other teams, Sacramento and Atlanta, but now even Atlanta can quiet that talk. But there was a question of, well, is he actually worthy of having been the number 1 overall pick, which is a postmortem that you do on drafts when you look back at it and be like, if you've redrafted, who would you take where? But you do need to take into account team fit. Now, when they took him, obviously didn't have Chris Paul on the roster. And that first season, it looked like perhaps they had made an unwise choice. But big men, it takes time to kind of get up to game speed. I mean, their entire lives, they've been the biggest dude on any court pretty much. So they can dominate just through sheer force of size. And then you factor into it, well, if he's number one overall, he's got solid athleticism, if not elite athleticism. And he's got all these other intangibles. So not only are you the biggest person, but you're also really quick and agile and a whole mess of other intangibles. But it takes big men time. It's like when people giving up on Wiseman, is this a bust or not? Like, you got to give, I think, big men 2 to 3 years before you can accurately assess whether or not their game is able to translate, because there's all kinds of other things. Pick and roll defense and your footwork is so key as a big man, because now you're up against just lightning quick guards and also other big men who can be just as agile and fast as you are. And that's not something that you're accustomed to dealing with. Plus, the game is officiated differently, and how to best utilize your skill set within the construct of how the game is reffed and the structures of offense and whatnot, and how you can best fit in and really impact. It's a rare occurrence when a big comes in and dominates. But Ayton has been solid for them. And I've said it to myself. I don't know if I said it on the show before. But I know when I'm watching games, I'm like, God, they need to get him involved and start feeding him the ball and basically try and get Lopez and or Portis and or Giannis into foul trouble. Keep that defense honest. And also, by applying pressure in the paint, it should open up your three-point shooters for wide open shots. So it's a key component within their offense. And when he has to go down and sit like he did in the last game, now you are fully relying on your jump shooters to try and keep you in this game. And they have enough shooters to where shots are falling, then they're going to be a tough out regardless. But if, like in the last game, and the last game could be an anomaly in and of itself, because I don't know that the team-wide they're going to shoot that poorly. Again, once again, you take off Jake Crowder and nobody shot above 25% on the team from three. But you need somebody forcing the issue down low to get you some points. But watching it in that last one, the Suns just seemed slightly out of sorts. It didn't seem fully like themselves. Anyway, Ishmael over in the chat says, do you see Bucks or Suns coming back to the finals next year? I think this is the period in the NBA where teams would struggle to even repeat as champions, unlike the Warriors or Heat did in the 2010s. I mean, hypothetically, for the Bucks, it becomes an issue of if the Nets stay healthy next year, now they have a full training camp with all of them together, and you basically have the same nucleus with Durant, Harden, Kyrie, Joe Harris, and it also gives some of their younger guys a little bit more time to coalesce around that. And that's going to be a problem for you. Plus, the Hawks should be playing with even more confidence going into next year, and somebody else will invariably be playing well as, will Philly, who is now apparently trade talks are open, and Sacramento is one of the first credible offers I've seen, which is Bagley, Hield, and 3 firsts, something like that. There's a whole list of other teams that do have the assets for them, but they're focused on other teams or other players rather. So perhaps you can get Simmons, but I know the Sixers want quality pieces back because they have a championship window and it is right now. So they want quality pieces back. And I don't know if Healed, Bagley, and 3 firsts is enough because now you still have a point guard problem. And then can you go out and flip some of that point guard stuff? But if it ends up being something like 3 firsts, well, they need to restock their draft pick chest after having given up so much to get Tobias Harris that they mortgaged a decent amount of their current draft equity to construct the team as it exists right now. But the Bucks will have an uphill battle. I do think, though, that we're playing with the confidence of we made the finals and we can do this again. So I could foresee the Bucks making it back. The Suns, on the other hand, that's a taller order. The West is going to be loaded once again. Although now with news of Kawhi having reconstruction of a partially torn ACL, he'll be out minimum 6 months. But it could be as much as 9-10 months. And if that's the case, do you even play him come playoff time? I don't know. But top to bottom, we'll see what Utah does. The Lakers are going to come back healthy. The Warriors are going to come back fully healthy. And there's discussion with the Warriors being potentially in Dame talks. And it would have to be Wiggins, Wiseman, and a boatload of picks. But then if the Warriors are 4 of their starters are Clay, Steph, Dame, and Draymond, well, that's going to be a tough fucking team. They're not going to be that deep, more than likely, but your starters are going to be, otherworldly. So I think it'll be tougher for the Phoenix Suns to do it than the Milwaukee Bucks. Because we haven't even gone down to, then you have the other teams coming up, your Memphises of the world and whatnot. And will Dallas be able to get something for Porzingis and another year of Luka's maturation? They're going to be tough out again. Just the West is a minefield to get through. And the East has a few teams that are going to be really solid, and then a whole bunch of question marks as to I have no idea who these others are going to be. Then Ishmael follows it up with, it's honestly more fun to watch this year compared to when it's inevitable that the Warriors and Cavs will meet in the finals for the first time, or for the nth time, rather. I agree. People that were knocking it, like I was talking to a friend that's another basketball fan before it all started, and he was like, I'm just not that interested because there aren't those individuals. And I was like, oh man, I celebrate the fact that it's a change of pace. We're going to have a team that never is in this conversation be the champion. It's like the Raptors. It's awesome. The Raptors now have a chip. Do I think that they were the better team in that series? No. Does that matter ultimately? It does not. It does not. I mean, we can go through and rank, if you really want to, the best championship teams of all time from number 1 down to, how many ever it is at this point. But that being said, a championship is a championship. People want to knock, look at all the injuries. Injuries happen every year. This year, there has been a preponderance of all-stars that have gone down. But as I stated in a previous show, the majority of those I don't chalk up to the fact that the condensed schedule and short turnaround time in the offseason. It's just like a lot of these were freak occurrences. Could have happened in game 1, a la Gordon Hayward. Just like a weird, man, what piss poor timing on all of this. And some of them, inevitably were, but I think a lot of them were just like, listen, this individual is prone to breaking down. We've seen them do it numerous times. Or another one where it's incredible that they haven't. And specifically, I'm thinking of LeBron, given the sheer number of minutes and games that he's played. It's one of the most impressive things about him. His overall longevity and health second to none. But to have new lifeblood in the finals is fantastic. And when it was down to the final four, we have 4 teams, all that have are rarely, if ever, in this discussion for real. You know, by and large, it's been over a quarter century since any of these teams had a legitimate shot of winning a championship, and some of them have never. So yeah, I think it's fantastic. And there is a day in the not too distant future where Chris Paul and LeBron and Kevin Durant and James Harden and Steph and Clay and all these guys are going to be gone, some sooner than others. So to see the growth of the next class being able to push their teams to the finals is great. Hopefully we see this even more consistently where, yes, I do root against the Lakers, just in that the Lakers are always in this discussion, and I'd rather have other teams to root for or to watch, rather. And I only bring that up because they have LeBron. It's just like, well, I'd like the league to be able to get past LeBron because I don't want the league to fall into the same post-Jordan kind of depression from the average fan that they got so accustomed to seeing one individual that once that individual was gone, the game was lesser for it because there wasn't the measuring stick anymore of it's easy to see and quantify who the best is. And when the best is gone, now it becomes this overall collection of talent that the average person doesn't have as much an attachment to. Whereas if you can grow these younger guys into bona fide stars, well, then you're passing a torch from one generation to the next. And it's how the game will continue to grow. And you need it now more so than ever because of how thinly sliced, you know, everybody's time is, given the amount of viewing options out there between traditional media in sports to all the streaming services, YouTube, TikTok, et cetera, on down the line. People occupy their time in a vast array of ways now. So you need new faces, new blood to come in. So that's why I think it's a great thing that we'll be able to have a discussion of, hey, it's not the Warriors or it's not a LeBron-led team. And look, I got nothing. If one of those two teams, the Warriors or Lakers, won it next year, I'm not going to complain. It's so long as the basketball is good, I don't really care personally, but long-term health of the league, yes, I think it's better that we get some new blood in there. All right, so for Game 4 tonight, we got a bunch of people in the chat. What do you guys foresee happening? We'll close out like this. Because I don't see Phoenix. We have 3 games now as a sample size. They've lost the rebounding edge in every one of those. So I don't see that factoring into it. I don't know that Giannis, if Phoenix continues down this route of we are going to foul you, I don't know that he's going to shoot that well from the free throw line again. But perhaps. But if I'm the Suns, like, okay, as much as I don't want to give up the rebounding, I think that's to focus our energy there is incorrect. If I'm the Suns, I'm like, we have to drive. We have to get into the paint. We need to get them into foul trouble. We need to get their defense to commit to contesting and protecting the rim and draw fouls there and hopefully get some of those bigs out to go down and sit. So they're forced, the Bucks are, to sub in Bryn Forbes and Jeff Teague just because they don't have, you know, if Lopez gets into trouble, Bobby Portis is immediately coming in. So they have their solve right there of we can sub him out and we can run some combination of Portis, Tucker, Giannis as the 4-5 kind of hybridized three-headed monster type of thing. But they sub in, say, Portis, continue to drive at Portis, get him into foul trouble, and then basically force Bud to have to go further down and reconfigure exactly what group of individuals you're going to have out on the floor and what the identity of that team is going to be. Because I think they're still, the Bucks were forcing the pace in the last game. And I think when CP was out, the Suns were more than happy to run, and they were pretty effective at it, save for there were spurts where Booker was the primary ball handler, and he turned the ball over a little too much when CP would have to sit, and they would run, those lineups without him and like no campaign in there. But if CP's in there, he's going to want to force into a half-court situation, and you can get the Suns to settle for mid-range jump shots. Now, they've got two guys in Booker and CP who are excellent at the mid-range, and you don't, as the Suns coaching staff, you're not as bothered by that as other teams in the league would be, just because you have two guys who are elite at it. And that is a skill set that you need in the playoffs. You need somebody, you don't want everybody shooting mid-range, because then it becomes an inefficient shot. But you do want, it's a pressure release valve, because the defense is going to pack the paint and they're going to protect the three. So you have this open area. And if you have somebody like a CP or a Booker or, Kawhi, Durant, hell, even DeRozan, but somebody who is extremely efficient at those mid-range, it's good. So Phoenix, you're going to get those mid-range looks. And for Chris Paul, it's going to be a pick and roll favoring Paul's right hand, and he's going to curl around the right elbow and shoot a one-legged fadeaway, and it's going to go in. Even if you contest it, it's going to go in. Now, if they get that like 2 out of 3 possessions, well, suddenly the Suns are going to run that until the Bucks end up with a counter. And if I am the Suns, I'm perfectly happy to settle for practically a guaranteed 2 points every time down. But yeah, you're not going to win the rebounds if you're the Suns. So I think you need to press the issue on the inside and get to driving again. So Book, if that means you got to wear the face mask to be willing to take shots to the face. And I've never had a broken nose. I've broken other things. I've never had a broken nose. I've had one that was, close. And I can't imagine what that's like to have to run back into the middle of the paint over and over again. Fingers crossed I won't ever have to experience that. But you need to force the issue if you're the Suns. And then on the flip side of that, the Bucks, if Holiday can just shoot an efficient game, I think that is the biggest relief for the Bucks, because Middleton, I think, is pretty steady. He will have those games where he goes off, and then he'll have the occasional where he is abysmal at this point. But I think it's been a steady progression to where you somewhat know what you're going to get from Middleton at this point. So if you can get consistency from Drew, well, Giannis is going to give you at this point, Shaq-like numbers, and he's going to dominate the paint, and he's going to be a force. So much that they have a Giannis Wall, the Suns do, and every time I hear that, I just think of Van Gundy when he was the coach of the Pistons. Form a fucking wall. And he's the one that's pressing the issue. Giannis is more than anybody else of trying to get into the meat of that defense down deep in the paint. And it's been really effective, but that's what he's going to do over and over and over again. And if you give him little slivers here and there, those go-go gadget arms are going to reach past you and dunk the ball. So yeah, if I'm Milwaukee, it's like Drew, we need you to shoot 45% or so from the field. If that is possible, then I think the Bucks are going to be a tough out tonight. And also, if I'm the Bucks, I keep up the same intensity, like jumping into passing lanes and whatnot on defense that you had. Make sure that you keep Giannis. Like a lot of people push for Giannis. Why isn't he on Booker? Or why isn't he on CP3? You know, guy's defensive player of the year. But when you watch the games, his defensive, the reason he's so valuable on defense, I can't believe it took me that long to struggle to crystallize the thought. Yes. Searching for the specific word, it escaped me. So I'll just give the definition of it. His value on defense comes from the help. So it's like, oh, you think you've burnt your guy, and then suddenly here's this just mass of wiry, sinewy, lean muscle, arms and legs coming flying out of nowhere and stifling any attempt you had at that shot. So on the help side is where Giannis is most effective. So basically freeing him up to do that as much as humanly possible. I did like the adjustments they made to Brook Lopez on pick and roll coverages. Be interesting because they were switching basically 1 through 4, and then when he sat, it seemed like they were switching 1 through 5 with the Portis, Tucker, Middleton, Giannis, Holiday kind of lineup, or if you want to sub out one of Tucker and Portis for Pat, although Pat not really. No, he gets called for fouls that I don't think other players would have gotten called for, but it's rare when you see him kind of stare down the ref. He'll never abrade the ref, but to stare down the ref, it seems like he's like, damn it, yes, that is a foul. But he gives you so much hustle that perhaps you just assume that when it is a foul, it is a foul in the context. But yeah, if I'm Phoenix, man, you've got to get down into the paint. I realize it's not your specialty, but it gets the other team in foul trouble. It collapses the defense down into near the rim to open it up for your shooters, and uncontested shots are something that you feast on. And if you can get an uncontested shot for Booker, if you're driving, if it's for Bridges or CP3, or if you got Cam Johnson in there, it would just basically, then your offense becomes almost unstoppable. All right, so let's see what the chat has to say. Ramon Cook says, I hope they tie it up tonight. Jeremy Bowers says, CP3 having a big game and Suns win by 5. All right. Jeremy Bowers calling it Suns by 5. That would be the closest game thus far. Ishmael says, I hope they tie it up as well, but the Bucks have been inconsistent as fuck. So I think the Suns will win this. We'll see. I think, both teams have been somewhat inconsistent. A little bit here, a little bit there. But the Bucks, I think, Holiday and Middleton have been so inconsistent that it has a ripple effect on the rest of the team. Because Connaughton is, he's shooting something like 2 for 4 from 3 every game, 3 for 5, the type of situation, but he's shooting nearly 50% from the field overall, if memory serves. And then Lopez is having a down series, but he's also not shooting to the degree that Holiday and Middleton are. So the fact that those two are off, if they're off in this especially that game 2, where they were both off, the totals were so bad. I'm looking it up now. So collectively, they shot 12 of 37 in game 2 for Middleton and Holiday. Middleton was 5 of 16 and 1 from 6 for 3. Holiday was 7 of 21 and 1 of 3 from 3. 7 of 21, man. That is not good. But so far, we've got 2 tie-it-ups. 1 Bowers saying Suns by 5 because CP3. And then Heroes in the Half Court says, oh, he just got here a few minutes ago. And who you got tonight? Well, I'll close on that. I think the Bucks tie it up tonight. And game 5 becomes the pivotal game. It's something like, that's my hope, at least. And my hope, so that's what I'm pulling for. If the Suns are unwilling to drive, then I think the Bucks take tonight. If the Suns force the issue and get down into the paint and get some guys into foul trouble and whatnot, but they end up creating open 3-point shots on the perimeter, then I think they take this game. I still think Giannis will get his free throws because 12 is the fewest he's had so far in the playoffs. But you guys are hacking him. And by you guys, I mean the Suns. Every time he comes down into the lane. So he's going to continue to get those shots because he's going into the lane. I like that he's curtailed the 3-point shooting. And another thing I think the Bucks should try and take advantage of is running more pick and roll with Giannis. Because it becomes a pick your poison type of situation. And I think forcing that issue could pay huge dividends. I don't know that you need to do it every time down the court, but I think getting the defense into a pick and roll situation where it's, him and Middleton, and it's just like, all right, well, Middleton is going to do, he's going to, do a drag screen and get like Lopez and Middleton into the drag screen, and Lopez flies down into the lane for a lob. And if they collapse down into that, then Middleton is there for the kick out on the 3. And if they're going to honor that, then that means that you've got a nice open lane to get into the paint. But I think running more pick and roll with Giannis will probably be a smart thing. But there you go. I think Bucks take it tonight. I think it'll be our closest game. I like Bowers' Suns by 5. I think this will be the closest game we've had so far. The closest was, I think, game 2, or is it 10-point game? Yeah, it's been 13, 10, and 20 have been the scoring margins. Although, save for game 3, games 1 and 2 felt closer than that when you were watching them. At least they did to me. Now, Phoenix being up, they felt like they were going to win, but it didn't seem like it was so out of hand like it was in game 3. Anyway, I'm taking Bucks tonight. And let's see if Giannis can get another 40-point game. Who knows? Not entirely sure. But there you go. There's today's Dropping Dimes. So long as my schedule pans out correctly, I will be back on Monday, and I will do a special Monday. I'll do it at noon because I don't think I have anything that day until 3 p.m. So I can easily do this and get it posted and all that jazz. So look for this at noon, special edition on Monday. And if there's any change to that, I'll post it on Twitter over at Matt Knost, MattkNost. And if you're not on Twitter, I'm not entirely sure what to tell you, but look for it. I will make it happen at some point on Monday, but I will try for noon. There it is. Thank you to everybody that joined me in the chat. A lively chat once again. I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's game 4 and looking forward to game 5 on Saturday night. And hopefully it's knotted up come Saturday. It's 2-2 because I believe the statistic is 93% of the time whoever wins game 5 wins the series. So that's the, really big pivotal fulcrum game, historically speaking. So hopefully we get that because 3-1 is a different animal. 2-2 is way more fun, especially when you're not, a diehard fan of either of the team. You just want a 7-game series. Although, if it did end on Saturday, I'm going to get into trouble because Tuesday I'm supposed to do a family thing. And I'm going to have to miss that Tuesday family thing if this pans out the way it looks like it might be going. So I will catch some flack for that. That's for damn sure. But hey, what are you going to do? Finals only come around about once a year. All right, that is it for Dropping Dimes. Once again, thanks to everybody that joined me. If you want to watch in the future, I go live, and you can join me on YouTube over at youtube.com/droppingdimes. And it's every Wednesday at noon. And then obviously this upcoming Monday, I'll do a special one. So please, it's nice to see all the individuals in the chat watching along, interacting, getting some outside opinions and thoughts on this stuff. And that is it for me this week. I'll see you guys on Monday with a special edition of Dropping Dimes. Until then, stay safe out there. Go get that vaccine. Stay 6 feet apart. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Do all that jazz. And I'll see you guys very soon with another Dropping Dimes. Until then, adios.